Okay, we're live.
So, no more cussing? They don't have the authority to do it. They don't have the authority to charge.
You know that. And is it the same attorney that the Gulf Mayor has? I don't know. Is that
There's no
right? The board president. Oh, you.
Is that anybody say, hey, show me this, show me the statute. Okay.
The one, it's just, you can't.
No, I don't need you. Keep the camera on stage. You know how I do it.
Yeah. It's actually her voice that produced it.
What's his Flip over. Yes.
Yeah, they'll do it.
Yeah, I am. Hello, counselor. How are you?
Good, how are you?
As well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a request for you.
Yeah?
You deserve all the
Okay, yeah. Yep. Those are my meeting updates, and I decided to just make 50 copies so everybody can come get them. So I'm going to put these out. So yeah, that's good. I wanted to go through, I got my property card, and it's different from what's online. And grossly inaccurate. She added onto my basement also.
Really?
Yeah. In addition to the magical second floor. Okay, I don't want to move anybody's stuff. Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, she added my porch. I mean, square footage she added on the walls. Okay. And then these are some handouts that were left over from last time. So I'm good to go whenever you guys. Did you want to start that? Or what do you want to do?
Yes, sir.
There are going to be people here today from Crestview that's in Lafayette County.
I'm looking to see Charleston Township.
There is, yes.
You got reassessment notices?
That's what I heard. Yep,
I would
yep.
like to see those.
Yeah, and there's somebody that's supposed to be here today, so I'll ask him to come forward. These are my notes for today. So, oh, it's 10:01. I hate that. All right. Hi, good morning, folks. For those of you who haven't been here before, I'm Sarah Hocking. For everybody who's been here already, you've probably already heard my name. I've got a stack of notes for today's meeting. So these are the things I plan to cover today. So I'll start passing them. If each household could take one, it's slippery. That would be great. Thank you. And we do have a few more friends with us today. I have heard from about 7 households in the Crestview neighborhood got increases, and then the whole rest of Crestview didn't, so it's a little bizarre. So some of those folks are here, and there may be some people here from Charleston today because there are a few targets. You're waving, okay. Some folks in Charleston got targeted too, and it still seems to be individual targets. It is not, it's not a fair assessment of a whole. It is individual people in specific neighborhoods that got picked on. So we will come back to that. Just some updates. So Rex Barnes did not respond to my FOIA request. He hired an attorney, a new one, because his other attorney isn't his attorney anymore. But so he hired a new one, and they sought an extension. And by the FOIA law, they're allowed to get 1 5-day extension. So his responses will be due this next week. Denise did respond to the FOIAs, and go ahead.
I think it's really important that we just take a minute, and I'm going to have Sarah read this FOIA response. It's from an email exchange between Denise Shores and Rex Barnes. And I think it really ties into the meetings, and I'm going to take a minute and tie it into our own case. Yes.
Did you ask for that from Rex as well? Or same way with both agencies?
I did.
One produced and one hasn't?
Right. It's interesting. Yeah. And of all of the FOIAs, I started to read some of them to you, and as I saw people fall asleep, I stopped last time. But I sent about 9, and they're specifically targeted on information that she may have used. So if she used aerial photos, how did she go about getting those, and different things. So I only got 2 answers to my 9 requests. The one email that Chad and I have talked about is pretty interesting. So on October 4 of this year, Denise emailed Rex and said, I'm going to do a neighborhood reval on a lot of the neighborhoods that is on this spreadsheet. As you can see, there are a lot of changes highlighted in red at the top of each parcel that need to be corrected. How do you feel about me making those changes? Would you like me to wait for you to do site visits? You can call me if that would be easier. October 4th.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
Sarah's very literate. She's reading this word for word. Okay?
Yeah, that's why I said is, because that drives me nuts, but yeah.
Go ahead.
yeah. Rex had a fairly long-winded response. We worked through the parcels in our township on a roughly 4-year time frame, so we should get to these changes ourselves over time. Oh, so they didn't need to be done. Okay. However, we aren't going to be able to look at these on the spreadsheet in addition to the other requests we have been getting in our normal workflow. If you are wanting changes noted sooner than they need to be done, of course, but that's my comment, I guess you'd have to go off the aerials. But that will be a duplication of work. The county's duplicating work? Why do we pay for that? Because we'll be coming around and looking at them again through our review process. Our priority has always been to review our parcels every 4 years, check the city and miscellaneous permits we get, and address special requests as we can. Through our normal process alone, we are seeking to look at over 3,000 parcels a year between all 4 townships. This is before the behind-the-scenes work educating townships on the Paradise situation and the crunching of the township multipliers that were necessary this year and making double sure the data was solid. There are also the written monthly reports that the board wants, levy ordinance and B&A ordinance, the meeting prep, the constituent inquiries and referrals, etc. It has been a busy couple of years with the switch, our own new online data system, and the things mentioned above. I know this is a long-winded response, but I guess I'm trying to explain that we have a large workflow already and are not staffed for additional large projects. We have a process in place to discover these new changes. Therefore, at any one time, we consider the vast majority of our parcel data to be up to date. We use the aerials as tools in our normal process, but we don't interrupt our normal process when we get new aerial pictures. We are happy to help as we can, but the delay in some of the requests is a result of workflow listed above. If you decide to go ahead and make the changes, I would ask that at some point you get us the PDF files of the new cards so we can upload them to our system and use them as we review the parcels ourselves so that we don't make changes you've already made, and we're able to review the parcels ourselves within the most up-to-date PRCs. And maybe a little bit. I printed it like the wrong direction, but thank you very much, he says, and let me know what you decide to do, Rex. So Denise writes back and says, at 8:40 on October 5th, a Wednesday, and says, well, these neighborhoods do need revaled, and I hate to reval without the corrections. So I will go ahead and do what I can see on the aerials. Denise.
So it was a special project to target us, right? So let me tie this into our experience and our timeline for a second. So not everyone may know, I'm a quick recap. Last year, our taxes went up 83% based on an anonymous letter that has since been destroyed by Denise Shores. At the end of September, she was instructed to return our property card back and give us a full refund. So we got that $5,000 back. October 3rd, Heidi and I were invited to a policy and procedures county board meeting where it was discussed about anonymous letters. So they didn't have a policy on the use of anonymous letters. That same October 3rd meeting, Denise Shore came in with a spreadsheet and said, all this area is under assessed and I'm really going to focus on that. We took it as a threat against us. That she was going to continue to target and come after Heidi and I, and she was going to do it by going after all our neighbors in our subdivision. That was October 3rd. And October 3rd, she already had her mind made up. She was doing it. On October 4th, she emails Rex Barnes what you just heard. You were all targeted, and that's fact. A special project. Right? Remember her testimony here on that first meeting. Why didn't she reevaluate everyone equally? She said, I'm only one person. I don't have time to do that for everyone in the township. Right? She started October 4th. The letters were late this year. We were supposed to get the letters earlier than what we got. I just think this FOIA is huge. And when you tie it into our time frame, it really tells a pretty good story of what really happened here. Thank you.
Well, yes, Chad. And also, you know, this happens and then we have this, well, we don't have time to get to all of this. She doesn't have time to respond to my other 8 FOIA requests. Well, she's the one who set this timeline. We didn't set this timeline, and she's not following the usual timeline where we should have got notice in the summer. She obviously did this in the month of October and November. Now, the red marks, so she sent me the Excel spreadsheet, which it's not a size to be printed, but I'd be very happy to email it to each and every one of you. So if you want it, let us know. We'll exchange emails at the end. I know Terry is very happy, I think, to email to people also. So we can work on that, but I'm happy to share that.
I'm sorry, I left one part out about our story. I just want everyone to remember the Sugar Creek Homeowners Association meeting in October. Heidi came forward and said, hey, we need to tell everybody so that they're prepared for this reassessment when they get a letter. So we had a meeting after the Sugar Creek Homeowners Association meeting right here, and we told people, hey, we're nervous that this is coming. She had this spreadsheet. We interpret it as threats. We wanted to give you a heads up.
No.
So in looking over that spreadsheet with regard to my own property, because I don't know everybody's, but with regard to my own property, I then found more things that were incorrect. So not only did she make my basement fully finished, but like Chad and Heidi, she also added on to my basement. So I don't know where the bunker is. I can't find it, but somehow I'm expected to pay quite a bit of taxes on it. She also added additional plumbing fixtures, and the way she describes them is different, so you can't compare one spreadsheet to one property card, because in one she has a total value of what she values the plumbing fixtures at, and on the other she has the total number of plumbing fixtures. So now this makes us beholden to her to find out, where do these numbers come from? How did you come up with this figure? Because I tried to run the math a couple of ways and I couldn't figure it out because it doesn't have the same value back and forth. Other errors. I made a whole list, and the spreadsheet that, or not spreadsheet, this one's just a document, the Word document that I passed around for today's meeting, which has the days of appeal left, 16 on there, so we always want to be sure we know that date. Towards the bottom, you can see the questions that I have for her just from comparing my property cards. So I put that on there because it may be helpful for some of you to think about what areas might she be targeting. Yeah.
Ma'am, do you have any more papers? Some of those back are going to be.
Oh, shoot. I don't. Oh. Okay. And again, I'll email that to you too. We can do that. I have not tried to put it on the website, the Facebook page, because documents don't go on there very well. But, okay, so those were some of the things. And I specifically have the questions about the drone and the property. Other folks have noticed that the comparables, so the fair market value number is one that is really kind of eye-catching for a lot of us because it's a pretty big number and doesn't match the market. So I've asked her, why didn't she use some of the comparables that are houses that sold in our subdivisions that are lower than the ones that she included? So she undercut the numbers by using higher selling properties to compare ours to, and not the ones that sold a little bit lower, because that's where you get the average to see what the fair market value actually is. So I tried to make an appointment to go in and meet with her. She won't give me a time. So she's like, just come and get in line. Yeah, I don't like that. But anyway, so I'll just keep emailing her. And she went to Jesse Danley, our state's attorney, and said that she's getting overwhelmed with these FOIA requests, and why was I sending so many? And then when he found out there were 9, he was like, oh, okay, well, I'll talk to Sarah and just have her come see you. So we had the unofficial talk last night, and I told him that I think that the county has a really big problem here, and, you know, I was an assistant state's attorney in his office until May this year when I left to, frankly, make more money and spend more time with my family. And so Jesse and I have a great relationship, and I was like, Jesse, this is a problem. And Jesse's office is down to 2 attorneys right now. So don't tell the criminals that, but 2 attorneys. Boy, criminal is kind of a soft word here today, really, in my mind, but so they're going to have to bring in help from the Illinois Attorney General just to prosecute the thugs, frankly, and I know that sounds terrible, but the people who are committing other types of crimes.
We should probably let her go.
We should. There is a question. Yeah.
Is there any place that shows what one of your questions was, how they rate the construction from good to excellent or average?
Yeah.
Is there any place that explains that?
No.
Is there any place, when you look at your property card,
Mm-hmm.
the numbers, it's like there's factors that don't come up. The depreciation number, I can't come up with that depreciation number multiplying it by anything that they have printed on that card. So are there other factors that the computer puts in? She doesn't know.
No.
So are there, is there any place that we can look to find that? Plus, our basement wasn't even, it showed on a diagram, but the amount that they added to the assessed value and there's no way to tell when they touched it or whatever, the way they round up, and percentages, you add enough roundups to any number, you're gonna alter the accuracy of that number.
What we're lacking is transparency. Where did they get this figure that's coming directly out of my pocket? I just want to know. I want to pay what's fair, but I don't want to pay what's unfair. Yeah.
A resident of Sugar Creek called me and informed me, he said, can you look at your sheet? And I said, sure. He said, there's a line item on there called main home subtotal,
All right.
and it's different from the structural totals down at the bottom.
And is this on the online property card or the one from her? From her. Okay. So is that over on page 2? Main home subtotal. Oh, yeah, that is a different number.
All right, and the bottom one, the structural total, is much higher.
Yeah.
We were told that's the difference. If you have a base,
That's the difference in
that's how they
your
determine.
base. And he asked, well, why isn't that on my sheet? I said, well, we didn't have room. I don't know what this 3 acres of blank space is for, man.
They had a separate page for the basement.
Yeah,
But they had to deduct off the depreciation.
can I make,
Depreciation formulas are different for different homes.
yeah,
There is a home that was built a year after ours that's showing a higher depreciation than what ours does.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we, this is great discussion, absolutely, and we need to be together and aligned, especially as she's corrected certain properties. We need to learn what she's corrected with our neighbors and that sort of thing. But it's very important that we have our guest, came to come speak with us. And so Heidi, would you like to make an introduction?
Yeah, so thank you for being here this morning, and thank you, Tom DeVore, for your time traveling up here today and giving us some information and advice on the situation. We appreciate you, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions, but we just want to respect this time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Tom DeVore. I live over by the Metro East area in the Edwardsville. Most recently, you may have seen my name. I ran for Attorney General of the state of Illinois. And the last couple of years, I've been fighting Governor Pritzker and a lot of the stuff he's been doing. Prior to that, believe it or not, I spent most of my legal career doing real estate. There's a very small group of people in the state of Illinois who understand the real estate tax process. It's one of the most cumbersome in the nation. The people in the county assessor's offices and at higher levels, they don't understand it either. Okay? I watched the 2-hour video from, November 22nd, and I listened to your assessor. I listened to your township assessor, and I can tell you that neither one of them have any idea what they're doing. And that's not me picking on them. I don't know them, never met them, and it's not uncommon. The issues you have going on in Coles County are quite common across the state of Illinois, and it continues to this day, okay? The Constitution of the state of Illinois requires a variety of things as it relates to property taxes, but the most important one is that they have to be uniform, okay? I've heard a lot of you talking here today, and a lot of the conversation that was going on at that was November 22nd, getting into the weeds about your specific properties, which is okay, but there's a bigger issue going on here. If you're going to appeal your property tax valuation, it's fundamentally done for 2 reasons, sometimes at the same time. One is that your value does not reflect 33 1/3% of the fair market value of your property. The other one is that your property is not uniform as compared to other properties that are similar in nature. Those are the 2 ways to appeal. You may very well have a piece of real estate that is valued at 33 1/3 of its fair market value, and you're still being treated unfairly and have a right to a reduction. Because if like properties are only assessed at 20% of fair market value, you have a constitutional right to be assessed at 20% as well. I've won that case tons of times in the state of Illinois. I have prosecuted property tax appeals all the way through. I know how they work. Now, your county in Coles County passed a resolution in 2015. Are any of you familiar with it? Do you know what it means? It's very important that you do. The property tax code in the state of Illinois lays out the process of how property tax valuation is supposed to be done. I'll start where I'm going to end, which is that your assessor does not remotely come close to doing it correctly. She is materially violating the property tax code and the Illinois Constitution. So, Section 35, which is where your property tax code is, places a requirement on your assessor to revalue every property in the county every 4 years at fair market value. Specifically viewing them, valuing them, and putting those values in place. And has to do it uniformly and consistently for all similar properties countywide. That's a big undertaking, can we agree? Now that's been the law for a long time, and since that time, guess what? We've got more properties in our state, our counties are growing, real estate is becoming more complex, but what's lagged behind in that is the sophistication of the systems that are in place, the sophistication of the assessors, the sophistication of their deputies, all the above. They don't have the resources, they don't have the talent, probably don't even have the desire to do it the way that the property tax code requires it to be done. Now, there is also a provision in the law that says a county, by resolution, should they choose, can break the county up into assessment districts. The premise is that the county as a whole is too big to do all in 1 year, so you can break it up into districts, and those districts must be created by township lines. And in fact, that has been done in your county. I have a copy of the resolution right here that broke it into 4 districts. District 1 is Mattoon Township, because you have to break it up approximately based upon an equal number of parcels. So it gives about an equal workload. There was approximately 7,500 parcels in Assessment 1 when they did this. Assessment District 2 is Charleston by itself. Assessment District 3 is Lafayette, which is where we're at here, correct? North Okaw, Humboldt, and Paradise. They're all in one assessment district. And District 4 is Ashmore, East Oakland, Hutton, Pleasant Grove, Seven Hickory, and Morgan. Okay? You have 4 separate assessment districts in your county. In 2016, let me back up. What the law says is if you do it by resolution, which your county did, then what that does is it alleviates the burden of reassessing all of the properties in the county in 1 year to where you can do it over 4 different years of those districts. So in 2016, your assessor was to have reassessed Mattoon, 17, Charleston, 18, Lafayette and the other 3, and then 19, the next one. Now, in 2018, there was supposed to have been a reassessment of all of Assessment District 3, which included those 4 townships, in their totality. Not just subdivisions in those townships that they thought might have a problem. You have to do the whole district. The Constitution of the state of Illinois commands it. Case law, the seminal case comes back from the late 90s, was a Walsh case out of Tazewell County, where they were doing what your assessor, for all intents and purposes, is doing, and they found it unconstitutional. So in 2018, if they had done District 3 correctly, which I guarantee you they didn't, I have not looked, but I know they didn't, then in 2022, which is where you guys are at right now for a new assessment starting January 1st, 2022, District 3 would be then in that cycle to where District 3 as a whole should be reassessed. And the reason they've done that in the law is to try to break up the workload of having to have to do the whole county in 1 year. You can break it up and do segments of your county each year, and then it breaks a 4-year cycle. Okay? Now, when I listened to the bald-headed guy, whatever his name is, Rex? When I listened to what he said and then I listen to your town or your county assessor, what they are doing is unconstitutional. And here's what they're doing. They have an obligation this cycle to have went through every township in District 3, which is Lafayette, North Oakall, Humboldt, and Paradise. Every property, and reassess it uniformly based upon the same standards to fair market value. They didn't do that. They said on the camera that they didn't have the resources to do that. And so they picked and choose, probably based upon bias, what neighborhoods that they thought they would go. I think, didn't you say they might thought they're picking on you?
Oh, yeah.
It happens all the time. I know we sit here as people going, that's not right. I see it all the time.
Well, we were targeted outside our quadrennial last year.
And I'm getting to that, yes.
Based on an anonymous letter.
I understand. So what the Rex said is what he's trying to do, I can tell, is within Assessment District 3, each year he'll take some area of Assessment District 3, and let's call it Lafayette Township, and he'll try to do some kind of hodgepodge of assessment. And then next year, he'll do another piece of the township. So he's trying to break up Assessment District 3 that should all be done in 1 year across several years, which is absolutely unconstitutional. What I expect they're also doing, from what I can tell, is they're going into these other assessment districts and hitting them even when it's not their turn in the 4-year cycle. Does that make sense? You can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is because of uniformity. Uniformity is the most important standard from the Constitution for property tax. Let me give you an example. If you have, and it's hard to look at, we got 20, 30,000 pieces of property in your county, but let's look at two. You have two people, these two families sitting right here in the front row, and let's say their houses are worth $150,000 apiece. The law says that they should pay about the same amount of the overall tax burden, because whether we agree or not, Illinois a long time ago said that your value of your home is indicative of how much of the burden you should carry as compared to the rest of the citizens. So if you have a $150,000 house and someone else has a $75,000 house, the essence of the law is that your station in life, since you have twice the value of property, you should pay twice the burden. Is that a good logic? We could probably quibble about that, but that's what the law says. So if I come back to these two folks and say they both have a $150,000 house, but let's say they're underassessed, and I'll get to that in a second, because traditionally properties are generally underassessed, and I'm going to get to that later. But let's say both of their properties are only assessed like they're worth $75,000. Regardless of what they're worth, let's set that aside. Each of them has a $75,000 fair market value last year. That means their assessed value is $25,000. It's a third each. So whatever the tax bill is, they're each paying the same amount, because the system shows that their properties are valued the same, even though they're both undervalued. So let's say we jump to the next year, and your assessor, for whatever reason, only targets this family because it's not an area of the township that they're looking at. And they look at this family and say, oh, their property's worth $150,000, not $75,000. So they raise them up. And now they're worth $150,000 fair market value, and their assessed value is $50,000. This family never got looked at because of whatever reason. Sorry, Johnny, you know I like to walk around. This family never got looked at, even though their property's worth the same. The tax bill comes out. Now this family's paying twice as much as that family, even though their properties are worth the same amount. Does that make sense? That's what's going on in your county right now. That's what's going on probably in every one of these districts, including yours. Many times, and I was listening to your video before, and there's nothing wrong with looking at my fair market value of my house. Because remember my example that I just gave you here with these folks. And these folks get raised up to 150. These folks are still at 75 fair market value. And you go to the assessor to complain. And the assessor says, well, is your house worth $150,000? You're going, well, yeah, that's fine. Well, then what are you complaining about? The Constitution says if your neighbor is underassessed, you also have the right to be underassessed. Otherwise, there's a disproportionate allocation of the tax burden. So a lot of what I was listening to was talking about, and it's, again, you can still talk about it. My basement is not here, and I don't have this, and I don't have that. That's specific to your property, but even if you fix those things, and you get to what you truly believe to be a fair market value of your property, based upon what's going on, you are still being treated unconstitutionally, because there has to be an effort district-wide, in District 3, to reassess every property in that district this cycle. And if they don't do that, when they raise all of you to what may be fair market value, and the rest of the, I don't know what percentage of you actually had this done to you, but let's say it's 25% of you in this district. The other 75% are getting a benefit because their properties weren't revalued. Okay, you with me, sir? So what they did, and this is what happens almost everywhere in the state. 3-year median level of assessment. Does anybody understand, council? You probably do. 3-year median level of assessment. The state, what they will do is the states will always look at the assessments of a county to make sure that your county is assessed as a whole pretty close to 33 1/3 to the best they can. They look at it at a 30,000-foot level, though. The reason they want to make sure that your county is not over or under assessed significantly is because the state of Illinois allocates funds to counties based upon the wealth of their county, how much property value is in the county. And so what they'll do is they'll take a green sheet, it's called. So every time a property sells in a township, in a county, all of it, there's a sheet filled out by the title companies. What was the sale price of the house? What was it assessed at, etc. The state of Illinois will take those and they'll throw out the ones that aren't arm's length transactions. And they'll line them up on a sheet and they'll find the median, not the average, the median. And when they find that median, they'll compare it to the 33 1/3 of fair market value. They'll do an average for 3 years, the state of Illinois will. And the state of Illinois will look at that and say, okay, based upon this macro analysis, you are over or under assessed, and they might give you a multiplier. Okay, and I think you guys had a, 4 or 5% multiplier from the state last year? No, not this, not the one they're doing. Last year, the state, I'm pretty sure, had one that they threw on for. I'll get to the 11 in a second. It's 4? Yeah, okay. And then it fell off, as they explained, which is right. So all they did, to do at the state level, is they'll throw a 4% multiplier on, trying to bring your county as a whole in line with the rest of the counties. But it'll fall off the next year because the premise is the state of Illinois thinks that your county assessor is going to fix that. Doesn't happen. So what counties end up doing, county assessors, township assessors, Rex even admitted it on the camera. I'm watching that. I'm like, guy's got him to say that on the record. It's great. is what township and county assessors do, because again, I'm not being critical. I don't know these folks. They're either stupid, they're lazy, or they're corrupt, or all of the above. I don't like to assume people are corrupt. I usually think it's a combination of stupid and lazy. But you can draw your own conclusions. I don't know these people. So what they will do is they will do this same analysis. And you actually heard Rex talking about when he did it, where he came up with his 11% for this year. But let me tell you something. In a quadrennial reassessment period where all of the properties are supposed to be readjusted to fair market value, you don't even do that analysis because you're going to fix any overall underassessment when you revalue everybody to fair market value. Everybody, not just a few neighborhoods. So the fact that they threw an 11% factor on top of some of you that also got this reassessment is unconstitutional times 2. Because what they did is they picked some of you out of the picture and they reassessed you based on fair market value, and then they also threw the 11% multiplier on everybody in the township. You can't do that. I have a case right here. It's interesting. I love it. I've used it tons of times. It's an Illinois Supreme Court case where they did exactly what Rex said. And the Illinois Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. Wipe it all out. You can't do it. Okay? You can't do it. So, figuring out what you guys want to do going forward. There's a bigger issue, and Everybody here has their own property tax issues. I get that. There's a bigger issue going on in your county than just those sitting in this room. It's not unique to Coles County, but it's here, and you guys care about your county. I get it. The whole assessment process in your county is invalid. They're not doing anything correctly, okay? They've admitted that they're not even reassessing everything in Assessment District 3, which means, yeah, whether or not your property serves 33 1/3 of fair market value or not, it doesn't even matter. Now, if you decide to go appeal, you appeal both of them. You raise the issue of my property's not even reflective of 33 1/3, but the bigger issue is you can't adjust me based upon some valuation method, which is, again, whether it's flawed or not, and everybody else in the township, or the assessment district, because it's 4 townships, gets some mass 11%. It is unconstitutional 100%. You can't do it, okay? What that means for each of you is you have to decide how you're going to deal with it. If you're going to appeal to the Board of Review, it's very, very, very important that you do it right. Okay? And the reason it's important is because once you get past, boards of review typically are about as inept as your county board or your county assessors. They are. No disrespect to them. They live in a political world where you're going to be asking them, probably every person in this whole district has a claim, probably even across the county. You're going to go in front of your board of review, and the ramifications of what you're going to be asking them to do if you do this is huge. Right? Every bone in their body is going to want to be to hide from it. And what's important for you is that case that you make at that level at the board of review sets the record for every appeal that you would go through to PTAB or then into the circuit court system, potentially all the way to the Illinois Supreme Court. You don't get to go to board of review and this is a legal term, middle muck it up a little bit, lose, and then go try to hire somebody to help you when you go to the appeal because you've set your case at the lowest level. That's all. You can't introduce new evidence. You can't introduce new legal theories. Anything at the board of review is where it happens. It's the most important part.
So there's no additional information that comes in at PTAB? Because, okay.
No, they take the record. PTAB, I've argued in front of PTAB a ton. They take the record that you set at the board of review, the legal, it's almost like going to the appellate court. Okay?
Yeah.
You've tried cases, go to the appellate court. That's why it's important that you guys decide. You've got till December 19th?
Yeah.
Okay. December 19th to take these issues up. Okay? And it is a huge issue. It's a huge issue. What's going on here should, for all intents and purposes, wipe out the whole assessment process in Coles County. And I know that's going to have you frustrated, but I want you to know it's not unique to Coles County. I've made this argument in other counties too. Not at this, I've never seen one, though, where they've actually broken the county into assessment districts. Because, again, when you break into the assessment districts, the premise is you then channel all of the resources of your assessor, not into the whole county, but into one of the 4 districts every year, so you can get the work done. They've admitted to you that they're not even doing that, and they're actually within this district only doing certain properties, because they told you we don't have the time and resources. The Illinois Constitution doesn't give a damn about that. Because if you go back to my example, you cannot raise these folks to even their true fair market value while you're leaving their neighbor lower than that, because then they're paying more than them even though their properties are worth the same. And the Constitution says, and the case law says, if my neighbor is underassessed, or if you have used a different valuation method on my neighbor, I have a right to be treated the same. So the mass appraisal calculation that gave you the 11%, if you're using that on one neighbor, you got to use it on all of them in the whole district. And that may not even be correct, but that's a separate conversation. You can't take all of these people in these neighborhoods because you think they're a little messed up and do fair market value on them and then all the rest of them 11%. Because I actually went into your, I found a copy of the publications from 2021 and 2022, and did some comparisons in Lafayette Township, and many of them only changed the 11%, which means they never hit the radar screen of the county assessor.
So when you say evaluation, if you take a property in the southwest corner of Colson and another property in the northeast corner, those have to be assessed with the same valuation?
I have to say they have to be assessed using the same methodology.
So the same multipliers for square footage, I mean, that way?
No, it depends on the neighborhood or the area that you're in. A house in that part of the county may not be fair market value, the same square footage as the fancy neighborhood on the lake. I'm just saying that the methodology has to be consistent, right? Uniformity has to be in the logic, not in the value, because the values change, based upon the area. But they have to use the same. You cannot say, well, in Lafayette Township, 80% of the properties we applied the 11% multiplier, and the other 20% we went and did some kind of fair market value analysis. The fair market value analysis they did could even be flawed based upon the properties they looked at. It's a bigger question, but ultimately, to keep it simple, you can't do fair market value on some group of them and a mass appraisal on the rest of them. It's absolutely unconstitutional. The Walsh case from 1998 was this case. And I've used it a ton of times. And again, you've got a big issue in this county. It can be fixed, but you're going to have to make sure that you put that argument correctly. As many people as possible, putting it legally correct in front of the Board of Review and just pound it home on them, which if you're successful, it's going to vitiate and eliminate all of these assessment changes for 2022. They all going to go away. That would be the ultimate goal. You want them all to go away. And you know what? Your county board has a serious, I know Jesse Danley, he's okay. Yeah, we got another case together. He ran from it though, didn't he? Your county board has a huge issue here, a huge issue. If the people of this county want to push this issue, now I know it sucks because you guys have talked about, well, if I got to get an appraisal, it's going to cost you a few bucks. You're going to go hire a lawyer, it's not going to be cheap, whether it's me or somebody else.
What if you have proof that if some people have to get an appraisal, but if you're friends with Denise, you call her, she'll just fix your card and you're good to go? Because that's happening.
We could get into those conversations. It could happen. It might fix your situation, or it might have not necessarily, but unfortunately fixed a friend situation. But the issue you're dealing with here is so much bigger than these little one-offs that we could talk about, of how to, going forward, how do the people of Coles County have an assessment process that follows the law and it treats all of you the same. What should have happened, starting back in 2016, because I listened to the video, let me go back, I listened to the video. And Rex, is it Rex?
Yeah.
Said, and I don't know that to be true, that approximately 2000, so about 22 years ago, there may have been some private organization hired to reassess all of the residential properties in your county. Let's assume that was true. And that there was a countywide, fair, uniform assessment of all properties, residential properties. That was supposed to continue to happen, because then what happens is once you start, everybody's fair. Then the next year, you can look at, do we need a blanket township or county 3 or 4% because properties are starting to increase. But then every 4 years, you have to reset and look at that whole area as a whole to say, are we got some neighborhoods that are going up? Do we have neighborhoods that are going down? Etc. I guarantee you they've not done that in your county. They didn't do it in any county. Be right with you, brother. Yeah, go ahead.
Question about what happens. How that interpolate for the folks. If you continue to just do 25% per year for the township, what's going to happen in year 4, 5, 6 in Indiana? What's going to happen to the whole situation?
You're talking about if they've broken down Assessment District 3 as 4 townships, and we believe they're just doing a piece of that township every year? Is that what we're talking about? Well, one, it's unconstitutional, because the case law also says in that district, you got to do everybody, right? Because of the example I gave you. But what's going to happen, you do 25% of a district this year, you do 25% this year. What it ends up doing is creating what I know is going on in your county, Some properties are probably assessed at 5% of fair market value. Some properties are assessed at 70 to 80% of fair market value. And you get these huge disparities below and above 33 1/3%. That's what happens when you do that kind of stuff. I guarantee you that's what's going on. I haven't looked at your median level. Have you FOIA'd the median level of assessment analysis of any of them yet?
We had a FOIA on that. It said the 19, 20, 21, if I remember correctly, it was 28%, 30%, and 31%.
That's the median, but what's interesting to look at with that, sir, what's the lowest number? What's the highest number? Because you might have, the median might be there, but let's say, and here's a problem too, when they do those statistics that we're talking about, they might have...
I did.
Okay, it's
She
coming.
didn't give it.
40, there might be 40 or 50 or 60 sales in that time period that they're doing this analysis on. That is not even statistically representative enough to do anything significant. And so they use it because it's easy. Oh, we did the analysis and it looks like Lafayette Township is underassessed 4% last year as a whole.
What he's talking about too is the median that she drew from, that she had in the October 4th meeting, was just sales in our subdivision.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's just sampling our, she's not sampling the entire Lafayette district, she's sampling our subdivision.
Assessment District 3.
And she left out 6 that would have been on the lower side.
Yeah.
When you go into a whole assessment district, which again, Lafayette, North Okaw, Humboldt, and Paradise. When you go into that whole district, the law says you've got to reassess at fair market value, the whole district. Now, you can go into a subdivision, and you can look at that subdivision, and you can look at the values and assess that subdivision as a unit. Okay? Whether you get it right or wrong is a separate question. But the premise is you've went to every other subdivision in the whole district and did the same thing, because you can't bring them to a legitimate fair market value and not you, because if that most ridiculous argument, I think I probably know more about the impacts of COVID in this state than most, to suggest that your property value skyrocketed because of COVID was absolutely the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But if it's true, it wasn't unique to these few subdivisions, it would have been the whole district, right?
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
If we dive into the analysis of this area, quadrant 3, each township had a different multiplier. Other townships had 9%, Lafayette had 11. It's not even consistent township to township.
Oh yeah, here's what she did.
In that analysis, again, you guys, it's interesting, and at some point you might have to dig into, but right now the question for all of you is, the overarching issue is, they've done us, and I don't even know who us is, because what I would do if I was in this case, I would take all of 2021, last year's assessments, for everyone in this assessment district. I would line them up with this year, every parcel number in this assessment district. I would look at the change of each property. I guarantee you 70 to 80% of them went up 11%, right? And then the rest of them, there was some basis. If I have that analysis, I don't need a whole lot more to win a constitutional argument, right? I don't need a whole lot more, because you can't do it. You just cannot do it. And, yes, sir?
Well, see, they said that they were going to take away the 11%.
Okay.
So does that change what you're talking about?
No, because what they were likely of doing is Rex did the calculation of you. And if Rex did the calculation of 11% last year and applied a factor, that may not be problematic. Depends, but at least theoretically. But this year, he did the calculation during a reassessment period. You with me? The reason you ever do a factor is because you're trying to keep up with the market during a non-complete reassessment period, okay? So he did a calculation that he never should have done in the reassessment period, because if you really did the fair market value analysis of all of the property, it fixes any 3-year analysis of underassessment, right? You're fixing it by reassessing everybody. You don't even do that analysis.
Which also explains why it was never planned to do us, otherwise it would have done the analysis like the FOIA question.
There you go. You're right. And typically, the analysis that did the 11%, typically statewide, assessors do that even during a quad year. When you're supposed to do the reassessment, they don't do it because they're lazy, incompetent, or corrupt. And they just do this analysis and apply that factor. That was, in fact, the Walsh case, Illinois Supreme Court. They did that in Tazewell County for 42 years. Just always doing that analysis and never really doing and digging in. So what she's doing, they're still doing the analysis. Then they dug in on some of you, applied the 11% to everybody in the township, and then also triggered some adjustments for you on top of that. Right? They made, that was just probably ignorance. And now all of a sudden they're trying to say, well, yeah, that 11, one of you, when I listened to that, said, oh, we probably ought to take the 11% off. That doesn't fix anything. You take the 11% off, you still have adjusted my property to market value, and you've left everybody else 80%. Let's use that number, because I could do the math and figure it out. You just use the multiplier for them. You can't do that, right? You can't do that. If you're going to appeal those arguments, again, has to be done absolutely correct. Because if you don't, you can lose those arguments. If you lose those arguments, you're going to keep paying your taxes. Because that case could vary. PTAB, you've got a high chance. Winning at the Board of Review, I don't even think it's 50-50. There's so much politics going to be involved in that, because you're going to absolutely destroy the assessment process in your county. And you should. But I want you to understand your Board of Review is a political creature. Right? You're going to have to probably go to PTAB. And I've won these arguments at PTAB. And you've got to be able to do that, really well. So, I can take more questions. Yes, sir.
So when you attack this, you're saying the county, there's wrongdoing in the way that they execute. When you attack that, are you attacking that at that level or at each of our individual appeals?
You each have to file an individual appeal. Okay? We can also potentially attack, depending on your circumstances, the fair market value that they did is an alternative to it. But the main attack would be the uniformity constitutional. Each of you would have to file that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
I'll be you next, sir.
We should go ahead, everybody here should go ahead and petition for the, and then whether we do a group class action or whatever, but we need to, everybody needs to file and then go from there. Is what you're saying?
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's really no such thing, to the extent you're going to call it a class action. It's not, when you're doing a property tax assessment appeal, you're not really doing a class action. Each of you is doing it individually. Whether you all do a bunch of them together, I mean, I've done some of these where I've had 200 people hire me, and but I have to file 200 separate complaints, okay? Because when you get ready to actually go to your hearings, you got to submit a petition. You want to raise the legal theories that you're going to raise. You got to eventually give them your evidence that you're going to use, etc. It's kind of like a trial. There's also a possibility for certain people in your county not only to file this, I want to make sure I don't confuse people, your appeal, for some people, property taxpayers, to also go into the court and seek a declaratory judgment and an injunction out of the court to stop them from doing what they're doing. Because your appealing is just going to really impact your property, this cycle. There's a bigger issue here of the way that they're chronically assessing that you guys may decide, some of you, to go into the court system and file what's called a declaratory judgment action with an injunction to stop her from going forward engaging in unconstitutional stuff. It's kind of beyond this meeting. There's two different ways to attack this. Yes, sir.
A couple of things. One, if we all have to file with a consistency.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, but 70 people can't come up with the same words, et cetera, et cetera.
I understand.
We're not going to come up with that. So, isn't it obvious we're heading toward we need to have one central person, organization to file it for all of us?
That's up to you. I'm not going to come here and try to solicit you guys. But your logic is, if I was advising you, and I'd tell you, I don't care who to, you can hire me, you can hire my colleague, you can hire whoever you want.
Oh, no, you can't hire me.
Okay, you can't hire me.
I'm happy to help you, but you can't actually hire me.
I would suggest, again, Kirk and John know me a long time. I have clients in the room too. I'm not here to try to get you guys to hire me. You need to have one competent, solid person doing this, because all of your arguments are going to be consistent. I 100% agree with you.
I don't know about anybody else, but, that's what we got to do. So, and the other part of it, you said, that's one thing, but the mathematics, I'll generalize, because
Yes, sir.
First meeting, we were just talking about what I call the mathematics. Well, my property had this error or that error.
Uh-huh.
And
They'll drag you that direction on purpose.
We come up with a worksheet that says, here's how it comes up with, and I can argue, well, how'd you get that rate, how'd you do that, et cetera, et cetera. I'm kind of saying we need to throw that out the door. I mean, are we really going to gain anything from that as a group? Individually, maybe there's some gross errors that's worthy of going to take it.
Well,
Yeah, there,
And the third thing.
yeah, because I think we do need to do both, but
The third thing is.
Go ahead, sir.
You know, what's the timing here, I guess I see this is all not going to get resolved the time that I get my tax bill.
You have to pay the tax bill.
$5,000. So I assume that the advice or the smart thing to do, we still need to pay the tax.
You have to.
How much we have to split up,
that's right.
and then get it afterwards.
And they'll give you, there's some nominal interest rate they'll give you, but it's, yeah.
I didn't
Is
get
it that high?
9%.
I haven't looked in a while, but you do. You have to pay. How many of you in here, your property taxes doubled? Anybody triple? Triple? 2.5? Yeah. And so again, what ends up happening, sir, is this whole using the factors. You seem to be on it, sir, so I'm going to point at you a lot. They do it year in and year out all the time. And traditionally, based upon our state, what ends up happening is that after 2 or 3 decades of doing that, properties a lot of times are underassessed. I mean, if you look at what was prior to this year, if you looked at what was on your tax bill, sir, times 3, you probably didn't have a complaint, did you? Right. Then they say, oh, okay, yeah, we got it, 33 1/3, your assessor, she doesn't know what she's doing. Oh, yeah, we got to get this done, and we got to get properties 33 1/3. Okay, if they're doing it to you, they can do it to everybody. Because then the theory is, like, go back to my example. Let's say that the tax bill was $100, and I had both of my property owners here that were underassessed $75,000 each. They both pay $50, right? Now let's say they get assessed up to the $150. They stay the same $100 now gets divided where they're paying $66 and they're paying $33. You take that across the county, that's what's going on. So when they raised you and double times a half, and your bill goes up $3,000, it doesn't mean that the tax body is getting $3,000 more. It means that everybody else that got treated differently from you is paying less than they should. Make sense? Yep. And that's what's going on. Now let me give you another little caveat, because I can talk about, I've been talking about COVID and mandates for so long, I love talking about property. Your taxing bodies have an interest in this, especially your school district. And let me tell you why. In the state of Illinois, many of the funds, the taxing funds, there is what's called a rate cap limit, which means they can only assess so much from the taxpayers based upon the overall value of the property. So the aggregate assessed value in Illinois for the general education fund of school districts is set by statute at 2.2% of that overall number. Now that number can go up from 2.2 if by referendum in the school district you pass it and they are allowed to increase the percentage. Absent that, they can only levy 2.2%. So if the EAV of your total township is 100 million, they can levy 2.2% of the 100 million. They can't ask for a penny more. Then that whatever 2.2% of whatever the 100 million is, it gets spread across all of you equally, uniformly, hypothetically. Your school district has a desire for that EAV to grow. Because as EAV grows, it creates more room on the 2.2%. So your taxing bodies are always putting pressure on the assessors on what that number is going to be. The best example I can give you is for, looks like everybody in this room will remember, back in 2006-07 when we had the real estate collapse. I guarantee you your assessments didn't go down. Because you know what happened? Let's say you're at 100 million EAV. They're assessing 2.2%. The taxing bodies are spending every damn penny. Let's say EAV, because you have a depressed real estate market, drops to 90. Then you can only take 2.2% times the 90, and it lowers the amount of money they can collect from you. Then they're bankrupt. So you will never see EAV go down because the taxing bodies, your superintendent is on the phone with whatever her name is, I guarantee you. looking for every dollar of equalized assessed value that she can find. Okay? That's going on in the background too. It's a little side note for you to understand some of the realities of this, but they're not assessing your whole District 3 correctly. They're not doing it. They have to do it. You cannot, they've already admitted on the camera that they're engaging in unconstitutional action. And it's not just your district, it's every district in the county that your neighbors are also a part of too. They're doing the same thing, and they can't complain resources. They can't complain we don't have enough people. The fact of the matter is, you guys pay millions, go hire more people and the right people. Yes, ma'am?
I just want to clarify, as far as filing the appeal, because we're talking about uniformity, we should all file an appeal. It's not actually until we get to the county board of appeals that we all need to be uniform in what we do there, or it's when we actually send our.
You have to file, at least get the appeal on file. When you're going to have to file a petition with the Board of Review of what you're appealing, that's where your consistency really important needs to come in. You need to make sure that you preserve that right, which is by the 19th.
Which is this form that we've been talking about.
I don't believe that form requires you to put your petition forth right off the bat. It just says what you have to appeal for. So you want to make sure you fill that out correctly. Correct.
Right, yeah. Well,
Could be.
that's part of why we're doing, well, that's
Could
actually
be.
part of why we're
It
doing these
depends.
meetings, is to try to
Again, I'm
get
not-
there.
Yeah, you guys, you have to decide what you want to. If you wanted to do that, yes, mister. I do whatever you want to do.
And we talked about this last night.
I know where you're going.
My name's Kirk Allen, I'm Edgar County Watchdogs. One of the things that I want to emphasize, and Mr. Donasso uncovered this with the school district on the very point. We had the PowerPoint presentation where they talked about increasing the AAV, okay? The two prongs that he's referencing, file your appeals. But what you referenced and being uniform and the next level of this process started, James, 7 years ago, roughly, and they went after the business owners. And we had 7 or 8, 10 people show up. And it's in court. That part of that process, Mr. DeVore is taking care of right now. Charlie Stoddard is the plaintiff. Take your individual appeals and fight this, but I beg of you, collectively, get council as a uniform body to stop this crap, because we couldn't stop it when they did it to the businesses. And we warned, and James for 7 years have screamed from the mountaintop at every single county board meeting, it's coming for you. It's coming to your house, and here we are. But you can stop it. You have the power to do it. And with this many people, you had how many at the last meeting? Collectively, you can put a stop to this, because the stuff that's going on at the county that we've uncovered and James has uncovered in the last 7 years is absolutely beyond comprehension.
We wouldn't be here if the county was doing the job.
Amen.
Tax bodies need taxing money to buy our roads, our schools, all kinds of taxes. But if you collectively don't get fixed with taxing at the county level, you're gonna be right back here again, and you're gonna be in the same spot. So everyone needs to think about that when we're talking about collective action. Yes, everyone wants their individual taxes to go down, no like an increase like this, but you guys need to start thinking bigger than that, because you might not have a chance to do this again collectively. It's very hard to get people to move on this within 7 years.
Go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
That you pointed out is the appeal that we do by the 19th doesn't have to be absolutely uniform in our approach.
Just got to preserve the appeal.
It's the next step that we have to be.
So Tom, I wonder if it might not be helpful.
No.
Could you explain, so let's talk about if we collectively wanted to do something. For me, I need a couple answers. One, what service would you provide?
Oh, okay.
And then second of all,
I can talk about that if you want to. I
yeah,
wasn't expecting
and
to.
then second of all, if we say we had the assessments thrown out, I'm putting the cart before the horse, but let's just say we win. Does she come back, this is our second time in this mess, does she come back next year and reassess us again, or does she have to wait the 4 years based on this, statute? So those are the two things.
There's a lot of ifs in that.
Yeah.
They will do the best they can if they can get away with it to hide this issue. So if they have someone, I'm going to pick my buddy here in a white shirt. He's clever. He knows what's going on, and he starts making the arguments that we've been talking about here today. She's going to fix your assessment. She wants you to go away. Now, some of you that may not be as articulate or knowledgeable, it's no disrespect, it's just, you guys know things that I could be an idiot about. They may try to do something and get away with it, which means that you could be right back in the next year, the year after. The only way to fix this is to bring enough attention to it countywide that something political happens. Right? That's really the only way. And is the gentleman here that was in that meeting that was pissed that he might have to spend $500 to get an appraisal to fix what they were doing that was wrong? Where's he at? I liked him. I liked his voice. There he is. I can tell by looking at him now. I started chuckling when I was listening to that riding up here and going, oh, that's my kind of guy there. This is bullshit. You're right. But I always try to bring it back on the taxpayers because we are all busy with our lives, raising kids, working, etc. These problems come from the fact that your county board, your assessor, the deputy assessors, and all of them are absolutely incompetent to this issue, right? And who's responsible for that? Ultimately, the people in this room and the rest of the people of the county are responsible for that. So having to then say, I got to spend money right now that I shouldn't have to spend, you're right. But then if you don't spend it, your taxes, yours went up. How many hard dollars, sir?
Mine?
Yeah, a year.
I went up from 310 to 530,000 on
So what in hard dollars, what would it? Anybody done that yet? Use the old tax rate. $4,000. So and again, you have to use the old tax rate, right? Because you guys are aware the tax rate means nothing other than they take the total levy divided by the assessment, and the rate's a result. It's not actually a driver. But about $4,000 a year for, you're going to live another 30, 40 years, right, sir? Yeah. But for those of you in here think you got to, that if God's going to give you another 30 years on this planet, that's $120,000 of property tax burden. For those of you that say your taxes are going to go up $1,000. If you don't win this argument, that's tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your life. You have to decide, am I going to fight that or not? You shouldn't have to, but you have to make that decision. If you want to collectively hire somebody, then you can make that choice. This argument could be real simple. You could win at the Board of Review if you all go make collectively a good, solid argument. It'd be nice to go to PTAB, because if it ends at the Board of Review, then the question is going to become for all of you, well, we won, our assessments went down, do you just go home? No. Or do you say no, but you and I have done this before. Or do you keep pushing to say, we're not done with this county board? Is she appointed or elected in this county? Appointed. Appointed. Okay. She can be removed for cause by the county board. I don't know the politics of the county other than what little I've been experiencing. You could push for it, because ultimately it's going to be a combination of a couple of things. And I'm not here to say she's not the person for the, you guys can, I don't know her, but what you do have for certain is a resource problem, because they don't have the resources to assess your county based upon how the state of Illinois requires it. And it's not unique to you. You go to my county, I live in Bond County, 20,000 people. Georgia Shank's a friend of mine. I've known her well. She didn't do it right, but I'm underassessed, probably, so that's okay. But my neighbor's underassessed, so that's all that matters, right? It's a resource issue. Is your county going to put the resources? Because you know what happened up in Tazewell County? The Illinois Supreme Court issued this order. They had to then go find, through some kind of bond issuance, millions of dollars to do a comprehensive, county-wide, private company assessment to fix it all. That's what Tazewell had to do. That's probably practically what needs to happen here. Yes, sir. You mean if you're going to fight this based upon the assessment? I don't understand, sir. Well, let's say that you look at the assessment. Does anybody in here, without giving details, based upon what they've changed your assessment to, do you think it probably is in line with fair market value?
No.
Anybody?
Not even close.
I wouldn't say yes or
And you can say that without this recording going, oh, he gave up his best argument.
But that's part of the thing is, we can fight it, and it still could come back, and they're like, well, yeah, you're all underassessed, we're all gonna bring you up again anyway. So, right.
But that's lawful. That's lawful.
Right, but I'm saying, like, the end result may be the same, you just fought it and said, hey, you've gotta do it the right way. Well, we did it the right way, turns out you're up 50%.
It could be, but again, keep in mind, that requires,
I'm not. I would say, like, of course, if I wanted to sell my house next year, I had to sell my house, of course that's what I would want, right?
Okay.
Because location, right?
and that's fine. You're not being the devil's advocate because, again, if everybody is assessed at fair market value, there's no unequal distribution of the tax dollars. It's when they change you to be fair market value, and maybe an appraisal shows that you're at fair market value. But the rest of the township or the assessment district, they didn't do that analysis. You have a right to say, I want treated and I want to be underassessed the way that they did. Let me give you an example. There were some lake lots in Bond County. The average lake lot in Bond County, the lot itself was assessed at about $40,000 fair market value, so $13,000 assessed. Somebody did a subdivision development and sold 8 lots for $150,000 because they've been selling for $150,000 for about 5 years, but they never went through a quad and fixed the values of the lake lots on there. So they were all in that low range. They raised the assessments of those 8 lots. Appealed. We did the appeal for them and went through, and they tried to say, well, these lots are worth $150,000. You're like, yeah, you're right. They are. So raise everybody else on the lake, treat them the same, and our argument goes away. You know what? There's a lot of people living in those properties that have a lot of political influence in the city and the county. They're not going to do that to them. So when you put them in a position to where the result is they have to raise everybody, things get really complicated. Because guess what? Let me finish this.
Yeah.
Guess what happens when you raise everybody up? It opens the door for the taxing bodies to take more money away from you. And that pisses everybody off. So, go ahead, Council.
Well, and I think what we're going to find is based on the cherry-picking behavior, they're finding it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know that was going to be my next comment was that was the excuse that they used is where you did the 11% multiplier for everybody and everybody else's we've attached as whatever she decided that other percentage was.
We've been gathering those numbers, and she has left out similar properties that sold at lower values so that her median is up here instead of down here.
So then the only other question I would ask, because of the whole uniformity thing, is, and I'm not in this though, because I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what the overall group kind of the direction should be. But for those who have called and made adjustments, for those who immediately filed an appeal, are they, if something came about where it was like, okay, we need to fight this as a group, taxpayers and stuff, have those people outed themselves because they've already taken a change or anything like that? And like I said, I'm not in that boat. But for some who have called and they got a change, yeah, got a change. Or they're going to file an appeal and they win an appeal, but it's not based on the taxing situation. It's based on, well, gee, you did this to my property and that's the reason you have to change it. If they've already said, if they've already done something and taken a step, are they going to be hurt by wanting to maybe join?
Can I try and explain it differently? Can
Yeah.
I add something real quick? I've been on a discussion with a few people on our Facebook page, right? Interesting who those few people are. Very interesting. But let me try and explain this again. If we are all assessed equally to fair market value, and we're not fair market value, I'm telling you that right now, we are not fair market value. But everybody in our quadrant, if everyone in our quadrant was, our taxes wouldn't go up.
Unless the taxing body asks for more money.
It wouldn't go up. But we're going to carry the burden because ours is overly assessed when other people in the country club got 11%, when other townships got 9%.
That's right.
It's not fair.
He's right.
Well, I disagree. I'm not on the other side of the fence. I'm just logically thinking, gee, if I would have jumped
Go ahead.
and called her and she made a thing, I'd be
It doesn't prejudice you.
I already put my name into that.
Yeah,
It doesn't
does.
prejudice you.
Okay,
No. What we've been talking about all along, and I know some people can make different meetings because of the holiday schedule, but first of all, get your property card. Get what's online, but get what she has also, because it's different. The one online is 2021. The one she has is 2022. Make sure that the facts are right, because I would just about guarantee they're wrong for everybody. And then meet with her and see what she'll do. Call her, try, she does some on the phone. Meet with her and see what she'll do. That does not hold you down. Just because you say, okay, now you corrected my lack of second floor, and I've harped on that enough. They're still wrong in other ways. There are so many different targets that we have to throw our balls through, if you will, on this process that we still can correct across the board. So, and we should do that. Everybody should file the 2022 residential assessment complaint that we've all been talking about. I've shared my example. And then we've talked about the evidence that we're going to need. And we have in the next 13 days time to put together the narrative, because this has to have a narrative. And so this is where we've talked about putting together a narrative that if everybody's going to do it individually, which is what we've been talking about, but the other option would be folks to hire Tom, and I think he would file each one, because each one still has to be individually filed, and that goes to the Board of Review, the County Board of Review. And so then we have to make sure we have all the evidence. We have to say what it's going to be, but then we have time to actually get it in, right? So like those appraisals and things, if you want to do it, and whatever your evidence is going to be. And then we go through that process, right? And this is where we've talked about we probably don't have a great chance of success. Maybe we do. We all get in there. They suddenly
That's how many of you do it.
Yeah, they get 150 complaints. Then I think maybe we have a better chance that they're going to fix that. If they don't, and just one second, if they don't, our next step is PTAB, right?
Correct.
Yep, and that's a de novo review. But as he's saying, we got to take all that evidence from that first step up to the next step, PTAB. And then from there, we think we have a much better chance, but if we lose there, then it's circuit court.
I've not lost at PTAB yet.
Yeah, I've seen really good results in PTAB. Yeah.
PTAB backed up anywhere from 6 months to 4 years.
Correct. Yeah, it took 2.5 years the last time we went. Yes, ma'am. You might know who they are.
Yeah, it's Matt Frederick is the chairman.
They're appointed by the county board.
Gerald Herman is a member, and Danny Lawrence, is also on the board, and then Denise is a clerk to that board.
The board of review is appointed by your county board members?
Yeah.
Don't have to be anything, to be honest with you. I've had board of review members in some counties that have little or no understanding of the process. I have some that are appraisers, some lawyers. Depends on them. So again, I don't know the skill set. It could be a mixed bag of anybody. Politics plays a big part in those board of review. So if 5 of you do this, it will be received differently than 200 of you. I'll be with you next, sir. Yes, sir.
I just, not wanting to debate or say anything about what is right, what they're doing is not right, it's not correct, staying away from that. But if, like Kansas County, it gets thrown out, they have to hire a private company to come in and reassess every property in the county.
Yes, sir.
And they have to get bond issue bonds to cover that. Ultimately, who's going to pay those bonds back?
Taxpayers. Taxpayers pay for everything, sir.
So, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
So we're going into it to write something that's not wrong. Don't go into it thinking, well, they have to reassess the whole county and everything else won't cost me a nickel. If they would have to buy all those bonds to pay for that, we'll be the ones paying for those bonds.
And hypothetically, those bonds would be paid off equally amongst all of the taxpayers of the county. Which right now, and he gave a good example, because when they increase levies, let's say right now your township is covering $10 million of property, or of levies. Last year, prior to this deal, you were all paying some amount of that. Now this year, that same $10 million, unless they ask for more money, is going to be respread across, and you're all going to be paying more of the same $10 million than your neighbors. That's what's going to happen based upon where you're at today.
So in effect, some people's taxes may have gone down, will go down.
A lot of people's taxes will go down.
Based on ours going unfairly up, based on this reassessment.
Absolutely.
That's the whole point about this being unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
We're getting the burden of a fixed tax a fixed tax.
Yeah, a hard dollar number.
You correct.
Yeah, you're going to pay more.
Just to clarify when I asked it was you, or everyone was paying. I didn't mean our district, including Humboldt, I meant like Sugar Creek, Marshboro, and Lafayette. Did everyone in our area here receive this drastically increase?
I don't know that anybody's analyzed that yet. Of who only got the 11%.
I mean, they did say in the very beginning of that first meeting, she did say, or one of them said, well, we want to use Lafayette Township as the standard by which we can raise the rest of the county. You know, so that's why what I meant was our Lafayette Township, not the...
What would you all have
You
done?
do realize this is unconstitutional. You understand that part.
I'm not against. I'm just saying, like, I'm looking at the arguments that are going to be said of, you know, well, did they? We did raise everybody's over here 40%, 50% or whatever.
No, that's not true.
11
It's not
is what they
Most
did.
of them 11. But here's the thing. Would you guys be honest with yourself? Let's just say that this year, being an assessment year for your assessment district, they didn't go down this path and they just did the 11%. That's all they did. That's what they've been doing before, I guarantee you, but it didn't get any of your attention. If they raised it 11% across the board, there are people in this room who still were going to be treated unfairly. Because if you were already at 33 1/3, and then they add the 11% because the whole area as a whole, remember when I told you you got the ones way down here, you got the ones up here? Let's just say you're not even at 33 1/3. Let's say you are already at 40% of fair market value. They throw the 11% factor county-wide, or here it would have been township-wide or district-wide. You were also being treated unconstitutionally. The reason you're sitting here with me and all of us talking about it today is because they engaged in the same unconstitutional behavior, but to the extent that it really got your attention. It's still the same problem that you're talking about, but it happens, and it's been happening to you, I guarantee you, year in and year out for probably 20 years at least. But now all of a sudden, some decision was made to really ratchet up some people. Now you're looking at this, and you're starting to see how they do this in a way that you may not have even talked about if they would have just kept doing it. Yes, ma'am. Well, it's not uniform, right? It's not uniform, right? It's not, and so
Thank you.
Appreciate that information.
if you guys decide to, in a group or somehow, to go down the path that you're talking about, that type of analysis in order to prove lack of uniformity and unconstitutionality is what someone would have to do on your behalf. That's just one street, right? You know, so can you imagine having to do that analysis for District 3, which is Lafayette, North Alcoa, Humboldt, and Paradise? If you guys decide to go down that path as a group and you hire anybody, me or otherwise, I have to spend all of the time and effort breaking that whole assessment district down and being able to put forth in a comprehensive complaint what they in fact did and why it was unconstitutional.
And we're getting a little short on time, so I think you were asked, Tom, if you would, not to put you on the spot, but
Okay.
to put you on the spot.
No, you can put me on the spot.
What, I think people want to know, like, what would it look like if individual folks or groups and hired you? What would you do? What would it cost?
Gotcha. Individual folks, unfortunately, it's really complicated to fight one of these at a constitutional issue. I mean, you charge by the hour to one person and it ends up costing what it costs. If enough people, because keep in mind, this likely could go to the Supreme Court. So you could hire a lawyer, 200 of you, and figure out how to pay by the hour and break that apart. It would be very complicated. Or you can do a flat fee, right? I've done these before and do a flat fee, and if we take this on and there's 50, 60, 70, 80 of you, I'm going to be working on that for the next 3-4 months, nothing but that, right? So the way that I've done these in the past, and you could do it now, if there's enough people, if there's 2 or 3 of you, I couldn't do it. But if there's enough of you, we do a flat fee, which that flat fee covers from right out the gate. I would be the one to want to file that for you. All the way through the Board of Review, all the way through PTAB, into the court necessary, as far as we have to go to make those arguments for a flat fee of per family for $1,000. That's how we do these. And again, that has to be based upon there being a group of people that want to do that and not 2 or 3, because again, you can spend a ton. Breaking this whole county or district down would take a lot of time, because I want to know exactly how many parcels there are, how many of them got the 11% multiplier only, how many of them were adjusted based upon some methodology, what was that methodology, was it even consistent, and making those arguments on each property owner. We may have to argue that not only was it ununiform based upon constitutional principles, who got the basement, didn't even have a basement? Is that you?
I got the second floor.
We would want to make those specific arguments too in the alternative to the constitutional argument, just to make sure we preserve that for you. So even though it would be 50, 60, 70 people, you're still having to address and represent each individual person. It's kind of like when I did the school district thing and I represented 700 families across however many counties for the mask man. You guys remember the mask case? No family could afford to do that and go fight the governor. When you had 700 families, it broke it down, it didn't cost that much. This is kind of the same thing. If people wanted to do it, you know, these are my favorite cases. I'd love to do it. But I think for it to make sense, it has to be enough of you to get together to do that. Because somebody that's going to pay $4,000 a year more for the next 30 years, he can say, okay, I'll pay $1,000. But maybe somebody that says, well, mine went up 300 and I might go fight it myself. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. You guys as a group have to figure that out. I think there's a very, very high probability for you guys to win these cases. And I think what's as important too is not only to win your individual case, because as this gentleman might have been saying, what if you can just go and talk to them and they lower you down and they only give you the 11%? Are you still going to fight? Right? You may be different answers. For some of you may say, nah, it's not my style. I'm not really a risk taker. I don't want to be on a lawsuit. If it gets to that point, well, it would probably. So I'm going to take that on myself. You guys can make those decisions as a group, but this issue here that we're talking about probably covers hundreds of property taxpayers in this assessment district for certain, and maybe even the other districts, because they're probably doing the same stuff in the other assessment districts. Yes, sir. That's all I have. Yes, sir. Oh.
What is the party from the 28th subdivision in Carlson? Ours, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it was over 60% increase in our taxes. And gone up 30% the year before.
Are they in Charleston Township?
They are in Charleston.
And see, you're not. What's interesting, sir, is your township is not even in a reassessment year.
Yeah, it's not.
That's where I want to talk to people like you, because at least with Lafayette and the others, you're in that period of time to where they're supposed to do this. You're in a district, they shouldn't even be doing any revaluation. So you're in a similar argument, but a little bit different fact pattern.
Now, in this subdivision, I built the first house about 6.5 years ago. And since that time, there have been crop growth houses. So, 3 of us now have been receiving property tax bills. But I've been waiting much longer than that because I built it first. Bottom line, I guess what I'm asking is, my question is, because we the party, what's the name of the Facebook page to follow?
Oh, yeah. The Facebook page, you would need to be, hang on, I've got it here. It's been renamed a couple times. Marksboro, let me see where I have it.
So one of the things, inquiring whether Tom should come today, making phone calls to say, hey, are we interested? What are your sense of this? There are people that said they cannot stay in Sugar Creek, Marksboro, and pay this tax. Like that they're going to sell, they're going to move. And I agree. I mean, this is our second run. This is not a one-time thing for us. And that I think we need to understand, would you file the petition on December 19th? If we hire you, say there's 40 families, are you going to file that so that's uniform and that's ready to go?
Absolutely, we have to.
Okay.
Your
Because
best chance is
unclear,
success.
right? So who would file the December petition would be the attorney who represents you. Therefore,
There'll be 40 separate filings, but they'll be identical on the constitutional arguments. They may have a little bit of factual differences on your individual valuations. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question. Because I'm getting the appraisal. Say I get the appraisal, I'm happy with it, they knock it down. I'm not happy with their process. I don't want to do this again in 2 years, 4 years. I don't want to do this. This is causing me too much stress, too much anxiety. Can I still file a complaint?
Yes, you can, because let's say that you get the appraisal and they adjust your property to what you think is a good fair market value number. I haven't done the analysis yet, but likely 3/4 of your neighbor citizens, they didn't have that treat. They didn't get the same evaluation. Remember my good neighbors, they just got nothing, or maybe 11%. So you have an argument to say, doesn't matter what my value of my property is, you have to assess me procedurally and fundamentally the same way you did everybody else. And if you screwed it up and you treated us this way and us this way and us this way, the remedy is throw all the crap out. And that's ultimately what I think is going to have to happen in your county to ever fix it. Yes, sir, in the back, in the glasses. Potentially, if you want to raise both arguments, if you just want to raise the constitutional arguments and not a specific valuation of your property, you don't need an appraisal. Does that make sense, sir? Yes, ma'am.
So if we did go, would you file the December 19th?
Yes.
That would be ideal. Yes, ma'am. I want to file it all.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So and that's the point I want to make. I think that when I thought about going into this alone, I would be getting an appraisal, and I would be giving them a number that essentially was higher, because people have less than, value. I've looked at places on the country club, just like you said, people are underappraised. Sometimes it's still a lot of money, but it's still, so you're almost arguing for still a pretty good size increase, and you're paying for it. And I like the idea that the process was wrong. The
Correct.
process was wrong, and that you should have received more, a massive increase in 1 year.
Unless you massively increase everybody.
And then that being said, if you can win it on that argument, then in my opinion, Rex and Denise need to be out on their asses, whether it be through election or through being fired. If there was a wrongdoing there, is that a reality that this could end that way?
I think if I'm a citizen taxpayer of Coles County, that's what I'm looking to have happen. But you also need to be honest with your county board members and say you need to find and commit resources to the assessor, because what Rex said, one, he doesn't have any idea what he's doing. But two, what he said is not untrue, is he doesn't have the resources to do it the way the law requires. But you know what the law says? It's too damn bad. You can't unconstitutionally treat these folks because you don't have the resources. That's not an excuse. You treat everybody wrongfully the same. Does that make sense? Treat them all with the 11% or the 8% or the 5%. Doing nothing, you guys probably wouldn't be sitting in this room.
People being raised 25 to 125%. That in itself shows a clear picture that they don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, let's go back to the EAV, okay? So when we talk about the taxing people are going to continue to ask. So I made 11 phone calls to find out what is Rex's salary. Like, if we're electing him, what are we paying for Rex? What is the assessor? Because they ask, look at your tax bill. You're paying for him. He has he works for the fire department. He's going to draw a pension that we're paying for, right?
Here we go.
He's working for the assessment office to have a second pension. This is what this gentleman makes, $47,300 as a part-time assessor.
On top of his fireman at
$80,000. So when we talk about the
Not having the
EAV
time.
and all of us paying tax, this is, and you asked the question, this is a problem that is not going to go away unless we collectively our voices and we say we've had enough. We don't want to, do we want to be back here in 4 years? I mean, this is what could happen again in 4 years. They're
Or
going to
next
continue.
year.
Or next year to keep coming back. That we need to stand and say this is not okay.
Yes, sir. Understood. No.
Yeah.
That's an excellent legal question. And the answer is you really have to do both, because your remedy to argue against your specific valuation has to go through this administrative process. To raise the issue in a grand totality, we can do that with another group of citizens. Maybe some of you the same, but we need to preserve your right to your specific value. And then we can go to the court potentially and take on the issue you're talking about. Remember when I said, were you here when I said there's really two ways potentially? You're exactly right, because there should be an injunction against these people to even use any of that crap. Yeah, exactly. But you have to do the other two to preserve. Yeah, you with me? Okay. Kirk has something real quick he wanted to say.
A couple quick points, and on to your point, the accountability side of this. When we first exposed this, James, Charlie, a few others in the room, 6-7 years ago, you have to bring the pressure. What happened by attending county board meetings brought pressure. Their next county board meeting is the second Tuesday at 7 o'clock. That's the 13th. Now here's what happened. In that process, the assessor who hired someone to go do her job, which is illegal, she ends up quitting. We get another assessor, supervisor of assessment. That person was trying to clean things up. They got rid of her. Now we have what we have. The problem will never go away without the political pressure, which is butts in the seat at a county board meeting and exercising your rights to address your government for your 3 minutes that they'll give you. They're so nice, they give you 3 minutes. And they will cut you off at that 3 minutes. But everybody needs to be there, because when they see these kind of numbers, they are going to be in full-fledged panic. That works. And I can tell you, I know it works when we put 500 people in the seats at College of DuPage and saw change there, from legislative change to firings to convictions. That's how you get rid of these people. And down to the township level, your assessors, there's a process to remove them for malfeasance. That needs to happen if you can identify it and prove it. There's a way to do that, but it takes the collective to do it. It really does. December 13th is the county board meeting. You've got to be there to speak up. And it's going to be so packed, I can tell you ahead of time what's going to happen, but don't not come. They're not going to have a room big enough. That puts them in a position where they're violating the Open Meetings Act. That's a crime. It's a Class C misdemeanor. If they have the meeting and don't get everybody in there sufficiently in a room for everybody. So you bring those kind of pressures, you're going to create all kinds of problems for them, and they're going to want it to go away. And the way to get it to go away, stop doing what they're doing.
There's an invite on the Marksboro Facebook. 20 of you said you're going to go on that county board meeting. So look on their webpage. If you can't find it, just post a question and someone will answer. But we want to get a number of how many are going to attend the county board meeting so that we can ask for a change of venue, getting a bigger courthouse, courtroom. So make sure you check that out on the Facebook page.
Please, yeah, I will be there. Heidi has a conflict.
What's our next step towards?
Yes. How do we do this, Tom?
Because we're running out of time, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is, if they're interested, I'll give them 2 different emails because when I had this same issue when I did the mask mandates for the kids, and hopefully there's not going to be 700 families now, but they can email and we can set the process up to get people. I'll send them a little document that just says, I'll need the property tax ID, the property owner names and stuff like that. And we can do that. I can give 2 emails if they want. It's Ryan, R-Y-A-N, at DeVoreLawOffices.com.
And that's D-E, spell it for us, would you?
D-E-V-O-R-E, DeVore lawoffices.com. Ryan at DeVore Law
We'll post it on the Facebook page too.
Yeah, big guy.
I know we all talk about getting appraisals, and there may be a time we need that. It probably could be down the road a little bit. Because I already talked to the appraisal guy, and he said, guess what? The housing market has crashed. I don't have any appraisals to do. I can get you an appraisal in 3 days. And that was...
If you feel that you want to make both arguments, sir, my suggestion would be to get that sooner rather than later. We don't have to submit it with the petition on the 19th, but it needs to come sometime thereafter. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just wondered, I know you said before, was that appraisal needed immediately or
You don't need to file it with the petition. And even your assessor said, and I agree with her, you can just get it to them.
But is it possible that if there is wrongdoing found, like where you say it was unconstitutional,
Yeah.
and they need to bump back to 11% or whatever?
If it's unconstitutional, it all goes away.
Yeah, they throw it all out.
It has to throw it all out. Yeah, because you can't, the 11%, the mass appraisal number, you can't even do that in a reassessment year, right? In a reassessment year, actually doing each property uniformly takes the place of the 11%. And yet they did it to some of you, I think both. You got an increase
They did it
and
to
the 11%.
everybody that.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes. Once you win the argument, the county has to issue you a refund check for the difference between what it was prior, what it was now. And I've had some of these, ma'am, where people have had to pay taxes for like 2 years before you get to the hearing. And then they have to give you some nominal interest. It's not a big, consolation. But they do have to refund. The treasurer would write you a check. Yeah. If they're smart, if a bunch of you file these cases and then you pay those taxes when it comes around, they better set it aside.
On the appraisals, I do want to make sure, we talked about, make sure that the time frame that they're looking at for the cash value or the fair market value ends as of 1/1/2022.
Correct.
You don't want to have an appraisal that's looking at houses sold during 2022.
That's correct.
Because that's not the right time period. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tom, please.
Clarification. So if a person puts down the $1,000.
Yes, sir.
Takes you through the appeal process,
Board of Review, PTAB. Up the line. And again, the premise of that is there's enough of you that want to do that. Because if you come to me individually, that could cost an individual. If I do that whole thing for one person and just say you're going to bill it by the hour, those can cost $10,000, $20,000. But the premise is if there's enough of you, even though I have specific cases and your facts are unique, I'm doing it all at the same time.
Yeah, how many?
I would hope that we have at least 30 or 40 under the premise that we're going all the way up, right? Because, the work, every person's requires the same amount of work. But if I'm doing it all at once and my staff, and I can put them on this, because if you guys do this and there's enough of you, well, I can't tell my buddy here because he's looking at me going, you got depositions to set in my case. Your old assessor, I'm getting ready to depose. That ought to be fun. But my staff, I'll have them working on this. And huh? It could. Yeah, I might ask her some questions about, I will ask her questions about this case. Yes, ma'am. Well,
we'll know before that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would think,
Yeah.
quickly.
You know.
Yeah, we're going to know quickly.
Yeah.
We're going to ask people to email within the next 7
because
days.
what
maybe
my IT guy is very savvy, and so I won't talk about your individual circumstances in a group message, but he will start putting a group together that, because when I was digging, I always use the example of the kids in the mass case. Could you imagine having an email string with 700 moms? Well, that was fun. Well, we did it, right? So if there's 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever their view is, we can manage those conversations. And if you guys know by the 8th, which I think is coming up, 9th, there's not enough people, you can fill that form out pretty quick.
Right. We've already been working that avenue.
Sir? Yeah.
Does it have to be just Lafayette Township, or can we incorporate the gentleman from Charleston?
I like his case. It's a little different case, but it fundamentally is the constitutional, because keep in mind with you, sir, this is not even a cycle of which they're supposed to be revaluing at fair market value any properties in your district. He got 40%. So no. So anybody, Lafayette we've talked about, and which is the other in Assessment District 3, all of you, we were there. Anybody in the other assessment districts, here's a map here they have. You guys take a picture of it. Here is a copy of the resolution that says, okay, for example, I want to go through this. In Mattoon Township is District 1. It got reassessed wrongfully, we know, in 2016, and then again supposedly in 2020, okay? So if anybody in Mattoon this time around got a reassessment, it violates the law because it's not even in that cycle. The only district in the cycle is Assessment District 3 that should even be talking about fair market value and doing it uniformly. Any other township in this county that somebody got treated at fair market value needs to be a part of filing an appeal because they weren't even supposed to look at your property in that perspective.
But I just want to...
That's a high level. Yeah, there's a high level. It's a similar argument, but the facts are a little different. Yeah, I've never made the argument because I've never until today seen where they had broken it out into assessment districts that they would go and do fair market value analysis of properties not in that particular year. I've never seen that before. It's kind of funny.
Can I add a point real quick, though? I just want clarification. We are going to try for an injunction for every taxpayer in Coles County. If we collectively get together, would we be assisting those that economically can't afford to?
Filing these individual appeals based upon your property is one part of this. The other part is can we file a cause of action? The question is going to be that I have to look into, and you'll get this, Counselor, is whether or not making these arguments here is an election of remedies that we can't also go and file the court case. But what we can do, even though you guys put all this together, we can, I guarantee you, we can find a couple of property taxpayers in the county that aren't a part of this fight that I can use their name as a part of that fight. Does that make sense? Because they're not fighting the individual assessment. Let's say they're in one of these townships that nothing happened to, but they're your friend and they're pissed because they know what's going on. That's the kind of client we need to go fight in the courtroom to try to put an end to all of this. I don't have a problem filing both of those cases individually.
Yeah.
If there's enough people in the main fight that I can do that and I just do it as a part of it.
In my world, it would be a statement of work, right? So if we sign up for your representation,
right,
there's going to be a statement of work that includes...
It'll be in there.
Okay.
And it would be, we're going to fight your individual appeal,
yeah,
and if we can find the right client to fight it in the court, it doesn't have to be you.
Yeah.
It can be another taxpayer,
yeah,
and we can bring that into civil court to do that. I'll do that at the same time. Again, I can file that. If there's enough people, then I don't have a problem. Because that's where we can really put the hardest hammer on them to get a decision from the judge that says this is all unconstitutional and we're going to put a stop to all of it until you fix it, which is a little bit different than your property and your property and your property. We can try both.
Since the time is so short, I think it would be a good idea if we decided upon a date upon which we would let Tom know who is in.
What's our reasonable time? Yeah, I mean, how about by Wednesday the 7th?
Yeah.
Because Wednesday the 7th would be, that'd still be 12 days before the 19th that it has, all the complaints have to be filed by. Does that, the 7th, does that work for you, Tom?
That gives me enough time. If you go to the 9th, I'll spend all weekend putting them together. So you folks need a little more time.
We're going to email Tom that you want to be part of it. And we'll put that on the Facebook.
Can I put your Ryan email
Yeah,
on?
you can go to the 9th if you want to. I'll just spend all weekend preparing these things.
And how do they get it?
You can just mail it, or you can do credit card, or my IT guy, he can do all that stuff. Huh? Yeah, we'll have one. I'll prepare it and email it to you. You email me, say, Tom, I want to be in. You'll get a deal back that lays it out, and with the way you can submit the payment and all that stuff. Yeah.
And I'll put this email.
What's that?
Yeah, I'll put,
You guys probably have. Can you add me as a member? Is it a private group?
I'm sure we can add you as a member.
Is it a private group?
It is a private group,
That's
but
up
we
to
can
you.
absolutely add you. I'll put the Ryan email on there. You
Yeah.
said 2 emails.
Yeah,
Do you want a second one?
Ryan at DeVore Law Offices with an S on the end. Let me make sure I'm getting that
Yeah,
correctly.
The Facebook group? Same. It's the Marshville subdivision.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're just going to post it so everyone has it.
Years ago, and fought a long way to Springfield, and I spent about $5,000 doing it on my own. I did win, I did get my money back eventually, but it took me several years. It cost me $5,000 to do it by myself.
Got your taxes back, right? Yeah. And the legal fees, and people in Illinois, you can't recover them on these things.
$1,000, I didn't get the bargain.
So it's Ryan at DeVoreLawOffices with an S on the end.com. And I'm glad you said that, sir, because again, the only reason I can do that is if a group of people do it, right? Yeah. And then you can also email, you can do me as well at tom@DeVoreLawOffices.com. So Ryan will get, he's my IT guy, he manages all this stuff, and Tom, and then we can do it.
Where will we be able to find that to use that as a recruiting tool for everybody? Because he laid it out very articulately at the beginning. Is that going to be available to send out to get more?
It's streaming online right now. It's on the Facebook account.
And let me, I'll answer any more questions you guys have, but I want to leave you with this. Typically what assessors do is when you're trying to talk to them as a citizen, they don't even really understand the process. The citizens, it's so complicated. They'll always want to drag you into, well, what's your property worth? What's its fair market value? Do you think that you're overassessed, etc.? That's where they'll always want to take you, which is, again, and that's what I listened to in the 2-hour video. That's an important conversation. The issue here is so much bigger than that. The process, the way they're doing it, the disparate treatment that they're giving, my example of these folks versus these, that's the big issue, right? You just can't do that. And if you try to have that conversation with them, I encourage you, try it. You will lose them like that because they'll just absolutely shut down on you when you go in there and say, well, wait a second. And you asked the question, I think, ma'am, it might have been you. How did you decide who in Lafayette Township to reassess? Remember when you guys asked that question and they started looking at each other with like deer in the headlights?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there as a lawyer going, I don't care how you decided to do it. The fact of the matter is you can't do it. You can't cherry pick areas in the district. You got to do the whole district. And they're trying to figure out who decided what district to do. And I'm just laughing. They don't even understand it. And I was waiting for somebody to ask the question. But again, that uniformity conversation is not one that people talk about a lot. So, it's, if there's enough people that are willing to do this fight, right, I can do that one too. Yeah, I can do that. But that's the same fight I made against the governor and the Department of Health and all of them taking on the government agency. It's the same argument, so I'm very knowledgeable. And if you have enough people doing this, I'll do that too. We just have to make sure we get the right person to be our plaintiff. That's the thing. Because it may not be somebody that's already in the administrative process, right? Yes, ma'am. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. I can do an amended notice. No. Yeah, we can do an amended. Yes?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, come and take pictures
I want you
of
guys to see
everything
that,
up
yeah.
here. Absolutely. And I just shared this video to our Facebook group.
Oh, this video?
Yeah.